Hey, welcome to Church Experience Online. We're so happy you joined us today. As you're watching this teaching video, if you have any questions or need help getting connected, please feel free to contact us by phone or email. Also, our website is the best place to go to get access to helpful growth step resources. Join a serving team, connect in a life group, get your questions answered, or support this movement financially by giving online. At the end of this teaching video, you'll hear a Church Experience Worship original song. We hope this gives you time to worship and reflect on what you've just learned. Thanks again for joining Church Experience Online.
Well, welcome to week number 1 of Top of the Charts. Are you guys having a good time so far? Yeah! Right on, I thought so. Well, hey, if you're new with us, let me just explain what we're doing here in this teaching series. We're calling it Top of the Charts, and we're looking at songs each week. A song that you might hear if you're walking through the Countryside Mall, or if you're having dinner at Chili's, a song that they're going to be blasting most likely over the speakers, and it's songs from the Billboard Hot 100, the ones that are common around, popular, being talked about. They're in the culture, they're in our language. And so we want to look at these songs through the lens of what does the Bible say about the messages being carried in our culture. And I think there's a lot for us to learn. It's going to all come back to Jesus every week. But I think that there's so much for us to learn in dissecting the messages that are in culture these days. The things that, in some cases, we can learn some great lessons from, and things that point back to biblical truth. And then in some cases, some things that are messages that we're being presented with that are not helpful for us, and that we can kind of discern those hopefully more easily. So that's where we're going. That's where we're at here, Top of the Charts, week number 1. And you just heard the song, right? 7 years. 7 years, written by Lucas Graham. And he's writing a song about his life, right? And if you listen to the lyrics of that song, he's really describing the story of his life. He talks about how he's now in his 20s and 30s. He used to be 7 years old, and now he's, advanced in life. He's had some friendships that have come and gone, some that have remained. He talks about losing his mother earlier in his life. Talks about how his dad passed away at 61, and now he's looking ahead. If you caught the lyric, he's looking ahead to when he's 60, meaning that his dad died at 61, so how many years am I going to have in my journey, in my race of life? And so he's really describing through the lyrics of this song his life story. You and I have a life story that's being written every single day, and with every single decision that we make, your story is being written. And it might not be penned in the words of a song, but your story is being written. Make no mistake about it. You have a journey that God's given you. In fact, when you're born, they put the date of that birth date, whenever it was, on your tombstone at the end of your life. And when you die, they put that date on there. And then this little dash in between, that's the race. That's the story of your life that's contained between those two bookends, your birth date and the date of your departure from this life. And that story is being written. It is. And it matters. And it's important. And you have a race to run. We're all running a race. And I love how clearly the Bible speaks to the importance of the life that you and I are living. Maybe you've sat around and thought about, like Lucas before, what really will my life story be all about? How many days will I get? How long will my race be? Maybe you've thought about some of the themes in that song before. Well, the Bible speaks to this all over the place. It talks about our life in terms of a race that we run. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 24, it says, "Do you not know that in a race all runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly." And isn't that good? I don't run aimlessly. I don't just kind of go through life like it doesn't matter, because, listen, today actually matters. The race that you run will make a difference. And every decision, every day is building on top of the ones before it. And that's becoming your life story. Some of us think that maybe like one day we'll do something that will, be worthy of the life we want to live. And the reality is that you're doing it now. You're given today. Tomorrow's not promised. Yesterday's already gone. This is the day God's given you. And he says, in this day, run. And I really think this is almost humorous, and how it's written. And part of this, where it says, don't you know that in a race, everybody's running, but there's only one who gets the prize? So run in such a way as to get the prize. Don't run aimlessly. So you can run your race, the life God's given you, in a couple different ways. You can run it aimlessly and you're not too worried about tomorrow and what happens to you after this moment. I mean, you're just kind of just going with it. Take it easy, it doesn't really matter. I'm here and then I'm gone. It's over. Why put any effort into it? Or you can live a life that's on purpose, that's strategically aligned with the purposes of God, and you can run with tenacity towards the destination that God has you on. And every day you can wake up and say, God, thank you for this day, and I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to invest it in the way that you want me to invest it. See, every day matters, so don't run aimlessly. There's eyes on you. Every day there is. There's eyes on you. Our new worship leader, Mark, who joined our team, he came to us and played in our band one week. We had never got the experience to have him play in our band before, and so we were kind of watching him and learning from him and getting to know him. And after he came and joined our team, we gave him the archives of all the stuff we've produced over this first year and a half or so of the church, and said, hey, you can catch up. He's kind of watching through some stuff and kind of getting acclimated, right? He's watching all these old videos, and he gets to the video that now is a few months old from his first Sunday here. And it was kind of like an interview weekend. We're getting to know him, right? And he sees the video. He presses play on his laptop, and he sees the video of the stage with the band up there, and he's up there playing. But then he notices after the first few chords are struck in the song that the camera, it zooms in, and it focuses. And he watching this video, he didn't know this. He's later on, after the fact, watching this video, the camera zooms in, and then it focuses right on him and just him. And for the whole rest of the song, and the whole rest of the worship set, this video camera is focused on him. And he's like, you guys were totally watching me, huh? I'm like, yeah, of course we were. We didn't know you. We want to make sure we're bringing somebody in the family that, we were watching to see, And so he came, and he's our worship leader and doing a great job now. But see, the point is this, he didn't realize at the time that he had eyes on him. And did you ever think about this? That you have eyes on you right now? You do? And a few paranoid people looking around like, where's the camera? It's like, no, not like that. Listen, you have eyes on you every day. They might be young eyes in your home that are watching what mom or dad does. You have eyes on you, and it might be peering over the cubicle or across the next office over or down the floor of the place you work in. And they know that you've said you're a believer and that you believe and follow Jesus, but they're just watching to see if it's legit. They're just watching to see if it's real. You have neighbors peering over the fence, looking down the driveway, and they're just checking you out, seeing if what you claim to be about is the real deal, right? You have relatives and extended family who are watching. See, you have friends, you have a circle of people around you that are watching how you run your race. There's eyes on you all the time. Every day matters. But those are not the most important eyes that are on you. As your life story is unfolding, as it's being written every day, you have eyes on you from above. And that's the eyes of your Heavenly Father are on you. Think about this, the one who holds your future in His hands, the one who created you, the God who made you and holds your number of your days in His hands. He has eyes on you. He's watching you. He's watching how you run the race that He's given you. He's granted you these days. It's such a gift. He says, here's your race. Run it. And He's watching how you run your race. So how are you doing? How are you doing on this race that God's given you? Everything you do matters. And not just everything you do, but how you do what you do. Do you know that races are primarily won not by laps, but by steps? It's true. Most races are won by a number of steps, not so much laps and miles. They're usually won by a matter of steps, a matter of moments. And so every moment counts, every day counts, every day matters. And here's the lesson, it's in your notes. Every day is a vital step in my race. Every day is a vital step in your race. So God gave you a race to run. He gave you a certain amount of steps. We don't know how many days we have. None of us do. But every day matters. Every step matters. Everything you do matters. And it tells us in Corinthians to run that race that God's given us. Not aimlessly, but purposefully, as if we're winning a prize, but not an earthly prize, a prize, an eternal prize, a reward, which is ultimately to come before our Father in heaven at the end of this race. And He looks at us and says, well done, well done, good and faithful servant. And that's what we're running for. We're running for the pleasure of our Father, to please Him, to live for Him. Because we love Him since He first loved us. That's why we run. And so run purposefully, not aimlessly. Run to chase God's purposes for your life and God's potential. Run not in vain, not chasing and being distracted by detours, but chase God, chase His purposes. Invest every day. Appreciate every day. Appreciate this day. God's given you another step on the track to where He's ultimately taking you. You know, we so easily get stressed out, right? And all the pressure of life's on our shoulders, and we wake up Monday morning, we're like, oh, another day. Oh, another Monday, another week. I got to do this all again. But it's interesting, you know, if you talk to somebody who's advanced in age and they're older, and you sit down and talk with them. I had a couple friends I'm thinking of specifically. One, a guy named Ron. He's passed now. He was in his mid-70s, and we talked pretty regularly and pretty often. And Ron said, you know, just about every time I asked him, how you doing, man? He'd say, oh, I'm still alive. You ever talk to somebody and they said that? I'm still here. You know, another day. And in my 20s, when I first met this guy, I was thinking, what kind of response is that? You know, I'm still alive. Well, yeah, of course you're alive, you know? And it's like, that's all you got to say is just, I'm still here, you know? It's like, don't you want more than that? And I came to realize that he had a lot of wisdom I didn't have. That he was saying, I'm thankful. Even if things are not going great, I'm thankful that I've been given another day. When I woke up this morning, I'm not entitled to that. We feel like we're entitled to a long life and a lot of days. You're not. We're not. None of us are. So thank you, God. It's funny how culture kind of neutralizes or dishonors even age and years. But in the Bible, God honors age. You know, honor your elders. The gray hair is a crown. You know, it's an honor. And they have so much experience. There's so much you can learn from. And just to think about that alone, you know, there's somebody who's appreciating every day because they know every day is not promised. Tomorrow's not promised for any of us. It's a gift. Thank you, God. I'm going to appreciate this step. Every day is vital, so I'm thankful for this day. And not just appreciate it, but invest it. Invest it strategically. What am I going to do today to do something that matters? Because one day there'll be a group of people that will be talking about me, and they'll be standing around a casket. They'll be standing by a graveside, and they'll be looking back at my life. You know, I'm going to be at a funeral this week. I'm sad I'm going to be at this funeral. It's my last grandparent. My grandmother on my dad's side passed away. And so we knew this was kind of coming. She was in her 90s, a great woman of God. My whole life, you know, for 30-something years, she's been praying for me ever since I was a baby. And she passed the faith on to my parents, and they passed it on to me. And so it's been such a big part of my journey. And I know she's been praying for me. She's been praying for you guys. Been praying for this church. And now she's passed, and my dad's a pastor, so we're going to kind of co-officiate his mom's funeral. We're going to stand there together and talk about her life. And there'll be a graveside service at some point where people are standing around and they're thinking about this life that's no longer with us here. She's in a better place now, and that's awesome, but we're sad here. But man, she's run a great race, and she finished that race. What are people going to say about you when you finish your race? What kind of race will you run? And it's not like, you know, all these years from now, you're going to do something that people are going to talk about. And that's what, no, they're going to talk about the days that they spent with you and the moments and the things that were special to them. It's, you know, every day is vital. Every day is a gift. And if you're wasting the days and you're wasting the weeks and wasting the months, ultimately you're going to waste your life. So God's given you this gift, and every day is vital. And it tells us in Corinthians to run that race purposefully. On purpose. If you miss this, it's kind of the equivalent of an Olympic runner sitting down, you know, during the race. There's a dozen laps. I'm just going to take this one out. Right? Wouldn't that sound crazy in Rio if you're watching the big race and one of the runners just kind of sits down? I'm just going to take a little breather. You know, you guys keep doing the thing. I'm going to jump back in and just, like, you don't see that. Why? Because they know that every step matters. If they're to step back for a little while, you know, the end result will be far different. You're fully engaged in every moment, every step, as you should be in the race that God's given you to run. Every step matters. Every day is vital. Don't waste it. And don't let sin and self-centeredness pull you off the track and cause you to miss those important things that God has for you. Don't miss out on the opportunity, most importantly, to connect with God every day, to spend time with God every day. That's an opportunity. That's a gift to connect with your Father every day. Don't miss the opportunity to pour into and love on and listen to the people around you. Those children that look in their eyes and love them, to that person that maybe lives in the home with you, or if you're married, that husband or wife that you can love on and spend time with, the good friend you've been friends for years, or that new friendship, or that person you work beside, to not just, tune into whatever you're doing and forget that who's around you, and to forget that your job is not just to do things, it's to develop people and to love on people, to serve people. And if we could all just get that, I think we miss it, though. I think we miss opportunities to do great things for God, to do even little things in great love for God, to serve, to help the poor, to build God's church, to do His work. We miss those opportunities because sometimes we run aimlessly. And I'm just trying to remind us today that God tells us so much in the Bible about running purposefully, not running aimlessly, but to run on purpose because He's got a role for you to play that's so important in His kingdom, and He needs you to run purposefully. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. It's on the heels of Hebrews chapter 11, where it goes through a list of what I would say is kind of like a hall of fame of people who've done all these amazing things for God. There's all these stories of these men and women who've just poured out their lives in faith for God. It's kind of like all the medal winners, It's like there's all the people up on the podium that have done all these things in this race, all the records that have been set. It's like all these things they've done in faith. On the heels of that, Hebrews 12:1, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us throw off everything that hinders, and let us run this race that God has for us. Run hard and run after Jesus and stay focused on Him and throw off everything that hinders. Everything. Stay focused on Him because every day matters. I like this part where it says, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. It's talking about, I believe, Hebrews 11, all these great men and women of God who've gone before us in our spiritual family tree. Lists all these things out, and it says, therefore, we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. I think it's kind of talking about that, but you know what? That's not the only cloud of witnesses, spectators watching your life. That's not the only people that have eyes on your life, right? And it's not just the people that have gone before us, and maybe you have, like me, some people who prayed for you in your past, or maybe some friends around you. It's not just it's the people that are with us now. It's the people that will come after us, right? Those who are yet to be born, that will look back on our generation and see what we did for God, or what we didn't do for God, what baton we handed them, what the world was like when we handed it to them, when they were born into it, what kind of world did they inherit? And it's, so we're surrounded by a lot of people that are watching the race that you run, the life that you live. And what will they say about the race that we're running? What will they say about the life that we are living? Do we honor God or dishonor Him? How did we live? Did we live for Jesus? Do we live lives that were selfless or selfish? Your predisposition is to live selfishly. And if you don't check that, you'll live your life for yourself, and it ends in a very empty ending. It's not the finish line you want to live for. There's a higher purpose to live for, and that's to live for Jesus and His purposes and His kingdom. And He calls us to that when He says to run aimlessly. And since you're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, run, but do run with perseverance, but you have to do that, throw off the things that hinder. Throw off the sin that entangles you, anything that's going to hold you back, the weight holds you back. Here's the lesson in your notes. Runners break through barriers and they pack light. They pack light. So they pack light. They throw off the things that are going to hold them back, and they break through the barriers, the things that are holding them back. And I don't know what's holding you back today, but I'd imagine there's something that's holding you back from running the race that God has for you. I would imagine that there's something that's kind of holding you back. And you know what runners do? They break through barriers. They do things, maybe things that other people have told them are not possible, or they live up to expectations and break expectations. People, maybe that folks didn't think they could do something and they go do it. There's just so much more that God has for you than maybe that you've even realized. And sometimes you have to see it in somebody else before you can see it in yourself. And so take a moment, check this out.
Before April 1954, the common belief, the universal belief, because it had been tried again and again and again and people had failed, the belief was that man was not physically capable of breaking the 4-minute barrier, that he could not run a mile in less than 4 minutes. When something happens to them, they begin to believe that that's the way it is. That's the way it's always been, and they can't see the possibility of it being any different.
250 yards to go, and Bannister takes over. Watch his giant stride take him to the front as he races the last lung-bursting furlong.
Roger Bannister came along, and he broke the 4-minute barrier. Since that time, up to this day, over 20,000 people have done it, including high school kids. 20,000 people. What changed? Here's what happened when they got on the track. They knew it had been done. And because they knew it had been done, there was a new belief about this barrier that was unreachable. And those 20,000 people got in a race believing, knowing in their heart that someone had done it, that it's possible that they could do it. If someone can make their dream become a reality, then you can make your dream become reality.
So there once were a number of people who set out to run a race, and the race was the mile, and doing it under 4 minutes had never been done, and they were capable of doing it, but because it had never been done, when they got to the point of exhaustion, and they got to the point where they felt like their body was going to break down on them, that they couldn't go any further, you know what they did? They stopped, and they held back, and they didn't break the barrier. Why? Because it had never been done. They didn't know if it could be done. They didn't know if they could do it. Think about this. Think about this, though. After the barrier had been broken, thousands and thousands of people got to that point in the race. And when they felt like giving up, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if my body can do it. I don't know if I should do it. Instead of pulling back, they pressed in and they leaned ahead and they gave that little bit extra. Roger Bannister actually collapsed. If you watch the full original video, he actually collapsed after he crossed the finish line. He collapsed. He gave everything he had. And he broke a barrier. And since it's been broken and broken and broken. And why? Because it was actually possible, but once thought impossible. Who has looked at you before and said it's not possible? Was it a parent? Was it a coach? Was it a teacher? Was it a friend? And they didn't say it in those words, it's not possible, but whatever their words were, it left an imprint on your soul. It left a scar in a sense. And you look back on that and they've kind of put a certain value on you or a certain level of potential in your life. And you've kind of owned that. And you've never really thought that maybe you could do more. And what I want to remind you of today, that when God chose the king of Israel, David, the King David that we read so much about in the Bible, he didn't choose the brother in his family that everyone else would have chose that looked kingly. He chose the one that they didn't even bring in for the audition. He was left out in the field and God chose him. He said, I don't look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward. God looks at the heart. See, you may have disqualified yourself when God has qualified you in your heart, and you may have disqualified yourself because of the things that other people see. Maybe you've disqualified yourself because you've looked and you said, I don't have that ability. I don't have that background. I don't have that education. And God actually wants to do more in your life than you've ever thought possible. And you've just thought, well, I don't know. I don't know if that's possible. Possible. That's an interesting word. Possible. I don't know if it's possible. Jesus actually talked about the possible in the book of Matthew. And he looked into the eyes of a group of people in Matthew chapter 19, verse 26, and listen to what he says. Jesus looked at them and he said, with man, this is impossible. It is. It's impossible. But with God, all things are possible. And maybe someone just needs to look you in the eyes and say, you know what? It is possible. And you may have sold yourself short. You may have settled for less. Other people may not expect you to do more. But listen, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is what God believes about you. And with God, all things are possible. Come on, that's awesome. With God, all things are possible. So where have you settled? Where have you started to run aimlessly because it doesn't matter? Who am I? I'm only one person. I can't make a difference. What could God do in my life? There's just more. There is. There's more that God has for you. And if you don't believe that, if you don't own that, you're not going to go looking for it. And I'm just saying God has got more for you. And he says to run purposefully. Don't run aimlessly. But in this lesson, not only do they break barriers, not only do runners break barriers, but they pack a light. You're like, what do you mean pack a light? They pack a light. Here in Hebrews, verse 1, it says, throw off the sin that so easily entangles. Right? Throw off the sin that easily entangles. Those things in your life that are holding you back, lay them down. Because if you're carrying weight you don't need to, everything that hinders, throw it down. Because if you're carrying these things that God doesn't intend for you to carry, it's slowing you down. And there's maybe a reason why you're not crossing the finish lines that you're shooting for and that God has for you. So what do you need to lay down? They pack light. Runners pack light. I had a good friend. His name was Paul. We lived out west together for a time, and he taught me about mountaineering. I had never been mountaineering, like climbing an intense mountain and hiked, maybe climbed some hills, but like mountaineering. And so we were going to go on this overnight hike and use headlamps and, summit this 13,000+ foot mountain in the Bighorn Mountains, Cloud Peak. And it's a big mountain to climb. We're going to do it through snow and all this kind of stuff. And so he's telling me all the things I need to pack. He tells me about getting the right kind of backpack, a hiking backpack, but it needs to be light as possible. All right, you don't want to be carrying any extra weight up this mountain because every extra bit of weight, you're going to feel that when you've been walking thousands of feet up in elevation. You're going to feel that weight. So get the lightest pack you can. Sleeping bag, you want to get a really warm one because we're sleeping in snow and all that, but you want to get the lightest one you can. You don't want to carry a big heavy bag. Everything, the headlamps, everything was very specific. And I noticed something that was real interesting to me. He showed me his clothes, all this dry fit, certain kind of clothes he had, but he had torn the tags off his clothes. I'm like, why would you do that? And he's like, well, it's unneeded weight. I'm like, seriously? You tore the tags off it's like a fraction of an ounce. It doesn't matter. And in reality, I was right. It really probably did not matter that he tore the tags off of his shirts. Because that fraction of an ounce, you probably would never feel that, even if it was a dozen tags you tore off. But I realized after watching him that it wasn't the menial things that he was doing. It was the mentality that actually made the difference. Because I did not have that mentality. So I'm packing my pack. I'm the inexperienced guy. I'm trying to pack light, but I'm just putting there what I need. We get to the top, near the top of the summit. We're maybe an hour or two out. And he's like, all right, we can leave our packs here by this big rock. Just take out everything you don't need. And we'll just go real minimal to the top with our packs. And then we'll come back and pick up the rest of the stuff. So he's taking out everything he doesn't need. And we leaving our tent. We camped out. We don't need the tent for the top. Just everything that's going to slow us down. We leave it. I get to the top of the summit. We finally, we're exhausted. We sit down and, he pulls out of his bag his little piece of paper. We're going to write a little journal. We made it to the top. That way if we die, someone, was worth something, we made it, and they would at least know. But he's writing his journal entry. And it's just a little piece of paper. And I think he had a little golf pencil or something. He's just so minimal. And I pull out my big journal with all 150 pages. I pull it out and it's like, oh, yeah, that probably was smart. I carried this whole head thing all the way up here. I could feel it, And then I'm looking through my bag. We're up there pulling out some snacks and stuff. And he's like, what's in your bag? They're at the bottom. And I'm like, what? I don't know. I clean a lot of stuff out and dig it. He's like, is that your sleeping bag? I'm like, yeah, that's my sleeping bag. I brought my sleeping bag all the way. I could have left it with the tent, right? What am I thinking? I carried all this extra weight. Might have only been 5 pounds or something, but it was extra weight I didn't need to carry. You see, it wasn't that, it wasn't those tags that really made the difference. It wasn't those menial things. It was the mentality that actually made the difference. It was the way that he thought about things that actually impact everything else he did. So it's the way that we're thinking about the race that we run. It's not always just the thing. Because see, if you think it's just another day, it's no big deal. then you'll never go on to bigger things. And if you don't stop settling for being conquered by the mountain one more day, it's not one more step on it, it's not that big of a deal, you'll never conquer the mountain, right? If it's one more compromise, just one more time, no one really cares, no one really knows, it's just this one little thing, this little thing in my life, I'm doing everything else, it's this, that. Listen, that's holding you back, that's hindering you. And what does God say about those little things in our life? What does he say? Well, it's just this little thing from my past. You'll never get to the future God has for you until you let go of that little thing from the past. In Hebrews, listen to what he says. In light of all this, in light of the great cloud of witnesses around us, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run. Let us what? Come on, let us what? Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us run with perseverance. Now, to throw off the sin makes sense. Maybe you're saying, well, it's because you're a pastor. You would say that. Don't sin. Don't throw off the sin. That makes sense. That's going to mess you up. But what I see here is not just that. It says throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. I kind of wonder if, well, I'm not sinning. I'm not doing that. But, does this really matter in my life? I think a good question is it hindering you from unleashing all that God wants to do in your life? Because this says to throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Well, I'm not sinning. Okay, but is it hindering you though? And you're like, it's not really that big of a deal. I don't know if it's wrong, but is it hindering you? Because you're on a race, and if it's extra weight, it's holding you back, and it's not what Jesus wants in your life, then it might be hindering you. And so it's this throw off everything that hinders and everything that holds you back, right? Is all you want to let go of everything that holds you back, the sin that easily entangles. You want to lay it down, and you want to run with perseverance the race God's marked out for you. Anything that's not God honoring in your life, anything that's not what He wants in your life, you want to lay it down so you can run faster towards God. In your notes, write this down. Keep running. Keep running through the finish line. Keep running through it. You can run to a finish line or you can run through a finish line. And those two things look very different, and the results sometimes are very different when you run to the finish line. You kind of ease into it, and you kind of fade into it. Some of you, this is how you want to end your life, right? You're thinking the golden years, retirement. I'm just going to fade out, man. I'm just going to take it easy. Good life. I'm just going to live it up on the beach, and some pina coladas, and I'm just going to have people kind of serving me, and I'm just going to kind of fade out, my feet up, just going to live the good life, and I'm just going to take it easy, just going to fade out. I don't know. I look at the Bible, and I don't see that picture for the man or woman of God who is chasing God. I for sure see that God wants us to rest. So take it easy and have those rests and breaks and all that. But I kind of see this vision for as long as we have breath in our lungs, that God has us on the racetrack still. That this is not the okay, all right, we made it, whoo, all right, I'm whatever the retirement age, I'm gonna just take it easy now, I made it. It's not like if you're looking forward to, if you're living your life for that, I think heaven is like the, whoo, we got through that now forever. It's just party paradise with God. And it's like, but we're here and we're on mission. As long as God's got breath in your lungs, He's got you here for a purpose, for a reason, for a mission, and He's got you running. And so for us to just set out a couple laps, I don't know. I've put in my time. That doesn't mean you're going to always work or do the occupation that you do. But listen, you are working at God's work all the time because it's all around you. It's the people around you. And so every day matters. Maybe you can mentor. Maybe you can raise up. Maybe you can encourage. Maybe you can pray for someone. There's so many opportunities. It doesn't matter if you're 12 or 92. Everywhere in between, God's got a purpose for you. He's got something He wants to do in your life. And you're like, I'm just a student. I'm in school. When I get my degree. No. Right now, maybe the greatest amount of people you're around that don't know Jesus. Right now, because you're in class with a few dozen people every day, and you're there, and you're coming and going, and this might be the greatest opportunity you have to make a splash for God. Be about His purposes. We have opportunities. As long as we have breath in our lungs, we're running a race that matters. So keep running. Run through the finish line. Finish well. So good to hear about how my grandma finished her race. It was sad. We were praying for her. Thinking about her passing is sad, especially the end of kind of like a generation. My grandparents. Just kind of thinking about that this week and We've been thinking about this week with the funeral. But she finished well, and all 4 of her kids were around her bedside, and they're all believers, and they all love Jesus, and she'd passed on the faith. She'd been praying for them who knows how many times, and all the grandkids represented by all these families, and she, she finished well, and she's there lying on her deathbed, literally, and I have a picture they sent me, shows all the siblings around the bed, and they're there, and it almost looks to me just like there's this glow, it's like she finished well. She finished well. She ran through the finish line all the way up to the very end. Last time we visited her, we were on our way back from Christmas going through Tennessee. We stopped, spent some time with her, and man, she's still talking about the Lord and the faithfulness of God, and she's still praying, and she's prayed for you guys. You should know that. She's prayed for our church, and it's just like, man, that's what it looks like to finish well, right up to the very last breath. It's for the Lord. It's living for Him. And so for you, and they're going to talk about you one day. And they're going to look back at your life, and I'm wondering, what kind of race are we living? Because these days, these are the precious days of the race God's given us, and they matter. So what are you doing that matters for God? What are you doing that really will make a difference? Maybe there's some today who've lost hope. I think we give up so easily. When we lose hope, we lose heart. We forget that good things, all good things in our lives, none of them come without a struggle. No real good things come without a fight, and you have to work for those things, and it gets hard. My brother-in-law, he's a professor, and he says, that Jesus, even when he was on earth, that he ministered among and served among problems and needs. It's true if you read his story. I mean, he knew what that was like. There's always going to be challenges, but I think we lose hope too easily. And maybe this verse from Isaiah 40, verse 31, is for somebody that came in here today without hope, and your hope tank was a little bit low, and maybe you've given up. And I just want to remind you what God says about us as followers of Jesus. Isaiah 40, verse 31 says, "But those who hope in the Lord, they'll renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." I love that. They'll renew their strength. They'll soar on wings like eagles. They will what? They will run, right? Everybody say run? They'll run. They will run and not grow weary. See, God has a race He wants you to run. He's got a plan for you. He's got a journey for you. Philippians chapter 3, verse 12. "Not that I have already obtained all this or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind, straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." I'm pressing on towards the goal of honoring Jesus and living for Him. I'm not going to give up. When there's setbacks, I'm going to pick it up and keep going. And when I feel defeated, I'm going to pick it up and keep going. I'm going to press on. I haven't attained it yet. He says, I'm not there yet, but I'm going to press on. I'm going to keep living for the Lord. This next day matters. Have you ever been talking to maybe a mom or dad with a young kid in their arms, like a little 6-month-old, and they're holding this baby. The baby's got a toy, and you notice the baby drops the toy, and you pick up the toy, right, and you hand it to the baby, and a big smile comes on the baby's face, and you're like, oh, yeah, I did, something good there. You feel good inside. Kid's smiling for a moment, and then the kid drops the toy again. You pick up the toy, you're like, all right, they got their hands full. I'm going to help them out. You hand the toy to the baby, and you see that the smile is even bigger this time on the kid's face. And you're starting to figure this out, and because the baby, the third time, drops the toy. And then what do? Of course, you're a sucker for it. You pick up the toy again, and you hand it back to the baby. There's a real big grin now, and you realize that this is not the toy anymore. You're the toy, right? That young kid has made you the toy, and he's toying with you, and it's just keep dropping, and you keep picking it up. Here you go, all right, and drop it. You pick it up, and you eventually just have to tap out and just quit, right? Because you know that they're not going to stop, right? It's just going to happen over and over and over again. And here's the thing, you and I, there's going to be times where we have a bad season. We feel like we fall down, and we get discouraged, and maybe things are just falling apart, and it's just like we get down, and I think what it takes to run the race God has for us is we just kind of we get down and we pick it up and we keep running. And things are hard and there's a difficult season, but we pick it up. We pick ourselves up. We keep going. We say, God, all right, I'm placing my life in your hand. I'm going to run towards you. I'm going to live for you. I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to keep going. And I'm just going to trust that as I put my focus on the Lord, you will renew my strength. And that you will empower me to soar on wings like eagles, to take me where you want me to go. But I'm just not going to quit. I'm not going to quit that easy. I'm not going to tap out. And I think Lucas Graham in this song, 7 years, he's kind of looking back and he's looking ahead. He's like, well, my mother and father died, and my dad, he was 61, and I'm in my 20s and 30s, and he's writing this song, I'm approaching, I'm going to be 60. It's going to be here before I know it. And what's going to happen on the other side of 60? Will I, like my dad, live to 61? Will I make it that far? Will I live beyond him? And he's evaluating. He's looking at his friends that are still with him, those who are not, and he's thinking about this life that he's lived. And maybe some of us today are getting the gift to step back a little bit and think about our life story that's being written every day and with every decision, and kind of looking back at our lives and thinking, okay, am I running the kind of race that really pleases God? Am I running the kind of race that God wants me to run? Have I given up? Have I kind of given up on the race? And maybe today, do I need to let God? Because it's so easy to give up and really let life embitter you. And that's, I think, probably one of the most important lessons today. It's in your notes. I can get better or bitter. I can get better or bitter. You're going to have some hard things in your life. There's going to be, you already know this, you might be living through it right now. But the reality is that those things can embitter you or they can make you better. Your health is going to break down at some point, just so no one's told you that. At some point, you're going to be the one that's there in the hospital bed, and things are going to be falling apart, and you're going to be at the end, and like, man, this is not fun. And you can, when things get tough, and you don't make the step that you wanted to make, or that relationship thing falls apart, you can let that embitter you, and you can choose to be an embittered person. And we all know those kind of people, and they're out there, and they've been embittered by the hardships of life. But Jesus didn't promise a life without hardship, did he? Even if those who follow him, it's going to be trouble, and I'll let you know. But he says you can be embittered by that, or you can become better by that. You can let those things in your life that are not ideal make you better. They can sharpen you. Because see, your focus in life is so important. If you're running a race, your focus is so important. And if your race is all about being better than somebody else, then that's an empty pursuit. And if you're race, that's a pretty hollow race, just to be better. Some people race for that. They race just to beat somebody else. And it's not like a person maybe, but it's like, I want to be better. I want to be kind of like this successful. That's a good life for me. And that's not going to fulfill me. But I'm going to be better than somebody else. Jennifer and I both had consecutive doctor's appointments, consecutive days this last month. So she went in for a doctor's appointment. I stayed home with the kids. The next day, it's my turn. I went in to do the doctor checkup, and she watched the kids. And so it's the routine checkups. You've done these before, right? And one of the parts of it is the vision test. She came home and told me about it. She's like, yeah, I stood there, and they had down at the end of the hall the chart with all the rows, of all the letters and numbers, the things you got to read. And she came home and she told me, she said, they tested my vision, and I just want to let you know, Brandon, that I have 20/20 vision in one of my eyes, but in my other eye, I actually have better than 20/20 vision, just so you know. I'm like, that's why I can't get away with anything around here. It's like, that's messed up. Now I know, finally. That's why I can't get away with it. I didn't think anything about it until I went in the next day to do my checkup, and I'm standing there. Sure enough, I hadn't thought about this at all, but all of a sudden I find myself standing there, and there's the chart down the hall, and the nurse is like, tell me what letters you can read. And all of a sudden, I don't know what it was, but just this whole thing came back in my mind that she told me, how good a vision she had or whatever, and this competitive drive just stirred up within me. And I'm like, I can't have less than her, It's like, I got to beat my wife. And so they don't tell you, of course, what line is 20/20 or whatever. They just tell you, what one can you read? So I'm straining as low as I can on that thing. It's kind of like, which one did my wife read? It's like, because I want to read the next one down, trying to figure this thing out. I'm just trying to read every little thing on the, it's funny how we do that without even thinking about it. I'm just going to try to, one up, or I'm going to try to, appear successful, or I'm going to try to beat somebody else. And that's just kind of in our human nature. But that's not the race you want to run, to be better than someone else. The kind of race you want to run is to be better than who you used to be. See, you're not who God wants you to be yet, but you're no longer who you used to be. And that's the goal. That's how you win. It's not just a destination that you arrive at, because that can be very discouraging if you just have this monumental big destination. It's the journey, right? It's every moment. And if you can kind of live in that moment and becoming better, that's very satisfying. And an example, I told some of our leaders this summer when we were hanging out, I said, I'm working on being on time. I've always been notoriously just a few minutes late, because I'm one of those people, right before I go out the door, I'm always trying to do 2 or 3 more things. If I could just get a little more done before I go. And then so I'm trying to work on that. So I saw a lot of progress for a few months, and each month I'm trying to see growth. And it was kind of cool. This September, the month we just finished, I had the most success I've had now. And trying, I was on time, I was tracking it, right? How many times I was on time? And I was on time more than I'd ever been my whole life. And so I feel really good about that. And then I realized it's October. And so I'm excited because I have a new month, and I'm going to even be more on time than I was in September. And I was really on time in September. I did pretty good. I'm going to even be better. And it's just like the win is the progress, is that you see growth. And I always have a number of things in my life that I'm trying to grow and become more like God and honor Him and be a good, faithful manager of what He's given me. And I love that seeing progress. My wife, Jennifer, is our kid experience pastor. And she works hard on that, but she also is leading our creative team, which is kind of cool for me because I get a little sneak peek in a lot of the stuff that we do, like the dancers you saw earlier. They were in our living room last night doing one final rehearsal run through, and I got to peek in and see what they're doing in there and all that stuff. Well, she's really into that, the creative stuff like that, and helping communicate Jesus in a creative way. And so she read this book recently by Lee Cockrell. He's the guy that pretty much ran Disney for a long time, like tens of thousands of employees. He ran the place, and they're very creative, obviously. And he wrote this book called Creating Magic. And she shared with me something that she read in that book. And it was so cool. The idea that he said, he's obviously been very successful. And he says, you know what? The secret is you find out what the obstacle is in your life. And every day you work a little bit on overcoming that obstacle. You take one more step to break through that obstacle every day. And you keep doing that every single day. And eventually you see that obstacle fall down. And I'm like, that's a great idea. So I wrote down 3 different things in my life. I'm like, all right, in my life, ministry, things like that, things I want to see God move, mountains I want to see Him move. And I wrote those down. I'm just going after them. I pray about these things. God, help me in different areas of my life. God, please. And every day, it's awesome to see the progress. The win's the progress. It's not always the destination. It's seeing growth in your life. Is there growth? So is there growth in your life? What's holding you back? What sin is encumbering you? Man, throw that off. What's hindering you? What's holding you back? What can you change so that your tomorrow will be built on a better today? So he says to run. Run with perseverance, the race marked out for us. But one more time in Hebrews 12, there's more here in verse 2. It's not just running with perseverance. It's doing more than that. Verse 2, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before Him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider Him, consider Jesus, who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So consider Jesus. Fix your eyes on Him. Put your eyes where they really should be. Not some arbitrary finish line, not something else. Put your eyes on Jesus. Focus on Him. Run through the finish line. Don't give up. And here's the final lesson in your notes. It's simply this. Fix my eyes on Jesus. Fix my eyes on Jesus. When I run, sometimes I need extra motivation when I get towards the end. I'm hot and sweaty and tired and ready to give up. And you know what I do? I put an arbitrary finish line out there that's not maybe where I really need to get to, but maybe it's like my wife is great at this. There's the mailbox, and it's like, all right, let's run to the mailbox. The mailbox not where you're going, but man, just having a finish line and it's something to focus on. It gives you that extra, but you know what? It's good to focus on where you've come from and what's behind you. I think that's great. And you see the faithfulness of God. You look ahead and you believe, oh God, you're able to do it. Here's where I'm going. But more than all those things, the important thing is that you don't look just back or look forward, but you look up and you look up to Jesus and you say, all right, Jesus, I'm going to fix my eyes on you in this race because I realize that if I have everything in this world, but I don't have you, the love of Jesus in my life, I have nothing. And Jesus, you're what matters and you're worth more than everything. And Jesus, I'm going to focus my eyes on you while I run. And I'm going to run hard. And I'm not going to quit. But Jesus, you're the center of my life and you're the focus of my life. Every day matters. I'm going to run for you. I'm going to run on purpose. I'm not going to run aimlessly. And some people do that. I'm not going to run aimlessly. I'm going to run on purpose. I'm going to run focused on you. I'm going to live for you and see what you do in my life. You run like that and you'll live a life. You'll finish a race one day. It will be a race, not perfect, but a race that was worth running and a race that honored God. Right on?
Thanks for joining Church Experience Online. Please don't forget to check out our website to get more connected, learn more, get your questions answered, or support this movement financially. You're now going to hear a Church Experience Worship original song. We hope this gives you time to worship and reflect on what you've just learned.
All things new. Jesus, we trust in you.